Salt. We don't think about it much, but when Jesus addressed the crowd during the Sermon on the Mount, he says, "You are the salt of the earth." Salt was an absolutely vital and crucial resource in Jesus' day. So when he's talking to this crowd of people, they're understanding salt can be used to season food. They're understanding that salt is a preservative, a way of preserving meat. It's what you put on both your grain and your bloody sacrifices in order to sacrifice and offer them to God and him look favorably upon it. Salt was absolutely vital to literally every part of their life, whether it was their own substance or whether it was the things that they did in spiritual practice. And all of these things are understandings that Jesus knew that the people would have. They were things that he was calling to their mind as he is saying, "You are the salt of the earth." But these things alone are not the full picture or the complete understanding of what Jesus was hoping to bring forward to their minds. See, Jesus was communicating everything that these people knew about salt. So part of what he was saying to them is that salt can have impurities, and these impurities, these stony materials, these metallic materials, the different dirts and debris, they reduce the amount of sodium that's actually in the salt crystal. And sodium is the thing that tastes salty. So Jesus is essentially saying that you can have impurities in salt, and these impurities in the salt will make the salt taste less salty. And this really speaks to what we can understand and know about Matthew chapter 5, verse 13. Most of the people were familiar with salt that formed on the shoreline of the Dead Sea. And this salt was full of impurities and sometimes had so much dirt and stony materials in it that it was unfit for human consumption. The salt crystals would have dirt, sand, and silt from the shore of the sea crystallized into the salt. So the unrefined and unfit salt was much less expensive than other salt that was much more pure. So because it was much less expensive, this salt that had all of these impurities, it was what was commonly used. It was the salt that the people following Jesus and listening to him teach at the Sermon on the Mount, this is the salt that they're thinking about because this is the salt that they use. It is the common salt. This salt that has impurities, this salt that has a bunch of materials and minerals and stony debris in it, this salt that has got dirt and silt and sand, all of this salt that has these impurities that make it so much less salty. And so because this salt was so much less salty and it had so much debris in it, it basically had to be purified before it was even able to be used for people for the purposes the salt was used for. So they would take all of this salt with all of its impurities and they would take it and they would refine it. They would pour the salt into water, and the sodium, the salty part, would dissolve into the water, but the dirt, the sand, and the debris would separate from the salt and the water, and this allowed for the people to clean off all the bad earthly junk that came with the salt. So for those of you that are saying, this sounds a lot like what Jesus does for us, you're absolutely right. Jesus said that we are the salt of the earth, and this means that we are useful, we have purpose, we flavor the world, we are preservatives of the world, we have so much good stuff that can come with us, through us, and out of us. But also, we're full of junk. We're surrounded with all of this earthly impurity on us. Like, we have earthly impurities that have to be refined and processed out of us. And this is definitely what Jesus does for us. As a matter of fact, that's why Jesus then goes on to say, if salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? He is bringing to these people's minds their understanding of salt and the salt that they were commonly aware of. And so the salt that they got that had all of these impurities, it didn't become more salty, and it barely has any salt flavor. Instead, what they had to do is they had to process it, purify it, refine it. And as they processed it, purified it, and refined it, what happens is, as all of the earthly junk was removed and separated from the salt became more concentrated. So it isn't more salty, its sodium doesn't go up, but with all of the other stuff being separated away from it, it now has more concentrated power, more concentrated flavor, more concentrated good qualities. So when you remove all of the other stuff, the salt now is saltier. It's doing its job much better. It's living for its purpose in a great and wonderful way. They purify the salt by removing all of the earthly junk in water, and Jesus says we are the salt. The act of water baptism takes on more relevance because it shows that Jesus has put us through an experience of purification. Jesus is refining the flavors of God in us, where all the earthly stuff is washed away, and what remains is the salt, the life, and the saved soul that wants to live a pure life with Jesus. The last remark in this verse, Jesus refers to the unsalty stuff, all of the impurities that have washed off of the salt. And he says, it is good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. That is exactly what they did with the impurities. The salt dissolved into the water, but all the dirty stuff rose to the top, like scum on a pond. So they would scoop away all of the junk, and because the junk is good for nothing, it got thrown out and walked on or trampled underfoot by men. See, the junk has no purpose. It isn't good for anything except to be thrown out and walked on. The earthly things, the earthly stuff serves no purpose other than to be separated from us. See, the earthly junk is actually holding the salt back from being what it's called to be. It was called to be salt. It was meant to be salt. It was created to be salt. But all the earthly stuff that attached to it is holding it back from its full potency. It's holding it back from its full potential being realized. It's holding it back from being able to be what it was created and called to be. The earthly stuff has no purpose, but the salt is good for flavoring food. It is good for sacrificing to God. It is good for preserving meat to make sure that your tomorrow still has food, even when without the salt and the preservation of the food, you would not have had food. So it's good for your future blessing. So Jesus knows us very, very well when he says you are the salt of the earth, because you have purpose and the ability to make an impact, and you have so many good qualities, and he's called you for something great. But also sometimes we let this earthly stuff on the outside of us, we allow it to keep us held back from being everything that we're supposed to be, from being able to make the impact that we can make, to be able to actually fully live out the life that God has called us to live. Like salt in their day, we are an abundant resource. Even though we are abundant, we have to be refined and processed, because in our current natural state, in the state that Jesus first finds us, we're not fit for human consumption. We're not fit to be used on food. We're not doing our job. We are not to the chemical level of being able to do good to everything that we come into contact with. But through Jesus' processing and refinement, what he does is he makes us into something that can literally make an impact for good on everything that we touch, on everything that we get around. We can bring good to it and good out of it, because we are the salt of the earth. And as salt, we are preservers. We are the preservers of the kingdom of God on this earth. But you know, one of the things about us is that we cannot do that job right if we are not everything that God has called us to be. We have to get to a place where we are no longer diluted by the earthly things so that we can be the ultimate preservers of the kingdom of God upon this earth. So let's make sure that our salt is purified and refined so that we can make an eternal difference while we still walk in the distinction of Jesus Christ, because Jesus knows us. He says we are the salt of the earth. Maybe, hopefully, this has given you a little bit of a deeper understanding of some of what Jesus was bringing to everyone's mind as he was teaching us on the Sermon on the Mount about us being the salt of the earth. I hope that you leave this walking in the distinction of Jesus Christ, pure, holy, and righteous for his name's sake. God bless you. Thank you.